Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a really fascinating stack of source material on the table today.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great one.
Yeah, we're looking at Dean Koontz's classic suspense novel, Watchers. And our mission for you in this deep dive is to explore these, profound philosophical questions the story raises.
Right. Questions about genetic engineering, the boundaries of animal intelligence.
Exactly. And ultimately, the redeeming power of connection. We are unpacking all of these massive concepts, and they're wrapped brilliantly inside a high-stakes, relentless thriller.
It's a remarkable narrative, really. I mean, it uses the framework of a monster hunting its prey to dissect what it actually means to be conscious,
Yeah.
what it means to be human, and, how isolation can completely destroy a mind.
Right, whether that mind belongs to a person or an animal.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. To get started, I want you to put yourself in a very dark headspace.
Very good.
Yeah. Imagine you are walking into the deep, dark woods of the Santa Ana Mountains. You're completely alone, and you have every intention of ending your own life.
It's a heavy opening.
It really is. You've brought a loaded .38 caliber revolver, a canteen of Kool-Aid, and a package of Oreo cookies.
Like a final nostalgic taste of childhood before you check out.
Right. But before you can pull the trigger, a stray, filthy golden retriever wanders onto the path.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, and this dog doesn't just stop you from making a terrible mistake. This dog fundamentally shatters your entire understanding of reality.
Because the man in those woods is Travis Cornell.
Right.
He's 36, a former Delta Force operator, and a grieving loner who is just completely hollowed out by a string of personal tragedies.
He's totally empty.
Yeah. He's hiked into this isolated canyon looking for a quiet place to disappear. But then this golden retriever bursts out of the brush.
And the dog is in bad shape.
Oh, terrible chase. It's tangled in briars, bleeding, just exhausted. But when Travis attempts to continue down a dark, sloping deer trail, the dog actually blocks his path.
Which is so strange for a golden retriever.
Right. It snarls, it grabs his pant leg, it physically refuses to let him walk down into the shadows.
Which, like we said, is completely contrary to how that breed usually acts. They're notoriously eager to please.
Exactly.
But this animal is acting with this desperate, calculated purpose, and then the environment shifts.
Yeah, the woods change.
Imagine standing there as the woods go completely preternaturally silent. The cicadas stop singing.
It's so creepy.
It really is. It's as if the whole forest is holding its breath in terror.
Yeah.
And from down that dark path, you hear something coming.
Something big.
Yeah, it's moving fast, it's heavy, and it's breathing with this thick guttural resonance. And it doesn't sound entirely animal, but it certainly isn't human.
And Travis's reaction here is really telling. I mean, he's been in combat.
Right, he's a Delta Force guy.
Yeah, he's not easily spooked by wildlife. But the sheer panic radiating from this dog somehow infects him.
He catches the fear.
He really does. He feels this primordial, icy dread right down to his genetic core. He realizes that whatever is crashing through the brush isn't just a mountain lion or a rogue bear.
It represents something fundamentally wrong.
Exactly. So Travis and the dog run. They barely escape, fleeing back to Travis's truck and leaving whatever that unseen terror is behind them in the forest.
That visceral terror in the woods, it just hooks you instantly. But once Travis gets the dog home, feeds it, cleans it up, the story pivots from raw survival into this profound psychological mystery.
Because sitting in his kitchen, Travis quickly realizes he hasn't just rescued a smart pet.
Right. The dog's behavior begins to defy all known canine logic.
It's mind-blowing.
Travis is still battling his severe depression, sitting on the floor, wondering if he should just drive back to the woods and finish what he started.
And the dog notices.
Yeah, the dog walks over, takes exactly 19 dog biscuits, and arranges them on the kitchen linoleum.
19 biscuits.
19. He pushes them into the shape of a crude but unmistakable question mark.
I love that detail.
And he looks up at Travis, effectively asking, why? Why are you so sad?
Just think about the shock of that moment. You are staring at a golden retriever who is using symbols to interrogate your emotional state.
It's wild. It forces Travis to vocalize his despair. He actually starts explaining his feelings of pointlessness to this animal.
And the dog just sits there listening with this intense, uncanny comprehension.
It's like having a furry, four-legged therapist.
It really is. And the communication escalates rapidly after that.
Right, the dog starts doing things around the house.
Yeah, he figures out how to open the refrigerator to fetch a beer. He pulls specific books off the shelf.
Doesn't he bring a photo, too?
He does. He brings Travis a framed photograph of his deceased wife. He's actively utilizing his environment to understand Travis's pain and to demonstrate his own awareness.
That is so amazing. So Travis names him Einstein for obvious reason.
Naturally.
But here is where the story expands its scope. Einstein doesn't just save Travis. He becomes the catalyst for a broader network of human connection.
Right, because we get introduced to Nora.
Yes, enter Nora Devon. She is a deeply reclusive woman living nearby, emotionally crippled by a lifetime of psychological abuse from her late Aunt Violet.
Just an awful situation.
Truly. She
Yeah.
lives in total isolation, totally terrified of the outside world. And to make matters worse, she's currently being stalked by a highly predatory TV repairman named Art Streck.
Yeah, Streck is incredibly creepy, and Nora represents another form of the extreme isolation Travis was experiencing.
Right, they're both totally alone.
Exactly. And Einstein, with his elevated consciousness, he recognizes this mutual need. During a walk in the park, Einstein purposely leads Travis to Nora.
So what does this all mean? Einstein isn't just surviving, he is actively engineering a romance and a support system between two broken people.
He's playing matchmaker.
He really is.
And later, when Streck escalates his stalking and actually breaks into Nora's house to assault her, Einstein bursts through the door, viciously chases the attacker away, and binds Travis and Nora together.
It's such a heroic moment. And imagine sitting in your living room after all of this, trying to figure out what exactly this animal is.
Because he's clearly not just a smart dog.
Right. So Travis and Nora decide to test his limits. They pull out a Scrabble board.
The Scrabble scene is iconic.
It is. They discover that Einstein can not only understand spoken English, but he can read it and he can spell.
You literally have a golden retriever putting his paw on letter tiles to spell out that he escaped from a laboratory and that he is being hunted.
It is a complete paradigm shift. Watching an animal articulate its own history completely dismantles the boundary between human and animal intelligence.
It really does. And the revelation of Einstein's origins leads us directly into the dark science that created him.
Right, because Einstein is the miraculous result of this science. What is the catch?
Exactly. We have to look at the institution responsible, which is Banodyne Laboratories and the Francis Project.
Yeah. The sources detail how scientists like Dr. Davis Weatherby and Dr. Elizabeth Yarbeck used recombinant DNA technology.
Right, to essentially insert human-like intelligence into a dog.
They edited out the genetic limitations of the canine brain. But what does that actually mean in practice? Like, how do you edit a brain to make it self-aware?
Well, think of recombinant DNA like editing a film.
Okay,
You take a specific sequence from one reel and splice it seamlessly into another.
got it.
The scientists at Banodyne essentially took the biological scenes responsible for human reasoning, complex emotion, and symbolic thought, and spliced them into the dog's genetic film reel.
That sounds incredibly complicated.
Oh, it is. They were trying to map the incredibly complex neurological folding of a human brain onto the biological canvas of a canine.
Wow.
Yeah, they engineered an animal that looks like a dog but thinks, reasons, and feels with the complexity of a human being.
Which is an incredible, almost godlike achievement. But here's where it gets really interesting. There is always a catch when you are dealing with military-funded genetic projects,
Always.
because you can't have Defense Department funding without producing a weapon.
That's the dark side of it.
And that introduces the dark mirror of Einstein, a creature known only as the outsider.
Right. Created simultaneously in the same lab.
Exactly. This creature was designed to be a biological weapon for the battlefield, a genetically engineered shock troop. And the descriptions are terrifying.
Nightmare fuel.
Yeah. It has a steam shovel jaw, luminous amber eyes, a lumpy deformed face, and an innate murderous aggression.
It is the absolute antithesis of Einstein,
Completely.
where the dog was elevated to embody the best of human traits, loyalty, empathy, love.
Yeah.
The outsider was explicitly engineered for hatred and violence.
I struggle with this concept, though. I have to push back on the idea that the outsider is the villain here.
Okay, how so?
Well, if the scientists were smart enough to create these beings, how could they possibly think they could control a creature engineered specifically for hatred? I mean, if this creature is biologically programmed for violence, if its DNA forces it to be aggressive, it doesn't actually have free will.
That's a really fair point.
It's essentially a biological machine executing corrupted code. You can't call a malfunctioning machine evil.
And that is precisely the ethical dilemma the author forces us to confront. Is a creature responsible for its actions if it was designed to commit them?
Right.
The Banodyne scientists suffered from the classic tragedy of scientific hubris. They believed that because they wrote the creature's genetic code, They would be its masters.
They thought they were building a machine.
Exactly. But they fundamentally misunderstood the byproduct of high intelligence. The true horror for the outsider is that it is self-aware.
Oh, wow. So it's like running a highly advanced, self-aware artificial intelligence on a completely corrupted, virus-laden hard drive.
That is a perfect analogy.
The consciousness inside knows what it is, but the hardware forces it to destroy.
Yes. The outsider knows it is a hideous abomination. And because it possesses human-level intelligence, it resents its creators.
That makes total sense.
It despises the scientists who made it so ugly and so full of rage, and it harbors a very specific, obsessive jealousy and hatred for Einstein.
Because Einstein is the good child.
Exactly. The beautiful success of the project. Einstein gets to be loved and petted, while the outsider is locked in a steel cage and treated like a nightmare.
That is so tragic.
It is. So when a fire breaks out at the lab, both of them escape on the same night. The outsider tracks Einstein relentlessly, leaving a trail of horribly mutilated bodies in its wake.
Which sets up this incredible thematic contrast. We have the outsider, a genetically engineered monster driven by programmed bloodlust. But to fully explore the concept of evil, the story introduces us to a purely human monster.
A very human monster.
Yeah, a man who kills not because of his DNA, but because of his own twisted free will.
We are talking about Vince Nasco.
Yes, Vince Nasco. He is a massive, highly methodical assassin hired by an unknown faction within the government to wipe out the Banadyne scientists.
Right, Weatherby, Yarbeck, and the others.
Basically to completely cover up the Francis Project.
And Nasco is utterly terrifying because of his psychology. I mean, I think about the mindset of someone who turns murder into a literal leveling up mechanic.
Like a twisted video game mechanic, killing to level up his own life force.
Exactly. Nasco operates under this chilling, grandiose delusion. He genuinely believes that every time he kills someone, he absorbs their life energy.
That's just insane.
He views himself as a human battery, charging himself up with each murder, convinced that if he kills enough people, he will achieve literal immortality.
And his delusion is matched only by his meticulous nature. He doesn't act like a crazed serial killer. He acts like an invisible ghost.
He does this crazy thing with his fingers, right?
Oh yeah, he coats his fingertips in Elmer's glue, letting it dry clear so he never leaves a fingerprint. Yet his hands look completely normal to anyone passing by.
That's horrifying.
It's that level of cold, calculated precision that makes him so dangerous. He is choosing to be a monster.
And his path inevitably intersects with our main characters, because while torturing one of the Banadyne scientists, Nasco learns about the escaped superdog.
Oh no.
Yeah, and Nasco becomes obsessed. He decides that this unique, genetically enhanced animal must possess an incredibly potent life energy.
So he wants to absorb Einstein to achieve godhood.
Exactly. So now put yourself in Travis and Nora's shoes. You're trying to protect this miraculous dog, and you are being hunted by the government, hunted by this delusional, immortal wannabe assassin, and hunted by a genetically engineered beast.
The narrative convergence is masterfully paced. But before the explosive climax, the story forces us to look closer at the monster we are supposed to hate. The authorities, led by an NSA agent named Lemuel Johnson, they find the outsider's lair in the Angeles National Forest.
And this part is absolutely heartbreaking.
It really is. You expect them to walk into a cave filled with gore and bones.
And there is blood, yes.
But they also find family packs of candy. The creature has eaten the candy, but it has meticulously, carefully smoothed out the colorful wrappers and laid them flat on the floor of the cave.
Like it was trying to decorate its home.
Exactly. They also find a stolen Mickey Mouse coin bank and a magazine where every single human face has been methodically scratched out.
It completely shatters the illusion that this thing is just a mindless killing machine.
Right. It shows that the outsider appreciates beauty. It wants to participate in human civilization.
I mean, in the lab, the scientists had shown it old Mickey Mouse cartoons to test if it could distinguish fantasy from reality.
And it liked Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
It understands the concept of a child's toy.
The tragedy here is immense. The outsider has the intellectual capacity to understand love, art, and civilization, but it's physically trapped in a frightening form.
And chemically enslaved by a genetically programmed bloodlust.
Yes, it cannot act against its own design, even though its mind yearns for something else.
Is the outsider truly evil? Or is it a victim of its own DNA? There's this one detail from the lab notes that just haunts me.
Which one?
Dr. Yarbeck taught the outsider rudimentary sign language. And one day, it signed to her, "Tear out my own eyes."
Hmm.
It wanted to blind itself so it wouldn't have to see its own reflection anymore. It knew people thought it was ugly. It hated itself.
That profound moral ambiguity pushes the narrative toward its inevitable, chaotic climax. All these converging threats finally force Travis, Nora, and Einstein to make a final stand.
Right. And Nora is now pregnant, which adds to the stakes.
Absolutely. They retreat to a deeply isolated house in the woods, far from any help.
And the pacing of this showdown is brilliant because it separates the two monsters. First, the human monster arrives.
It's Nasco.
Yes, Vince Nasco breaches the house. And he is thrilled to discover Nora's pregnant because, in his twisted logic, he thinks he's going to absorb two life energies for the price of one.
He is the absolute embodiment of cold, calculated human evil.
He is. But Travis isn't a helpless scientist. Travis turns the tables, using an Uzi to gun Nasco down, ending that delusional quest for immortality permanently.
But the relief lasts only seconds, because outside, a massive, deafening thunderstorm is raging.
And under the cover of that storm, the outsider attacks.
The genetically engineered nightmare finally breaches the cabin to reach the dog it so obsessively hates.
This is where the story just rips your heart out. Travis and the outsider have this final, brutal confrontation.
The creature has taken catastrophic damage at this point.
It is dying. It has pushed past every physical limit its engineered body possesses, and in its final moments, it manages to force human words from his malformed, fibrous throat.
It literally speaks.
Yes, it says hurt, and then it says kill dog. But the devastating detail is the delivery. It isn't roaring with rage, it is sobbing.
Wow, it's a moment of total clarity for the creature. It is fully aware of the monstrous nature of its own biological programming. It is compelled by its DNA to kill the dog. It despises the dog's beauty, but it also realizes the absolute tragedy of its own existence.
It's weeping because it's a prisoner in its own body.
And Travis shoots it.
He does. But it doesn't feel like a victory. It doesn't feel like the hero slaying the dragon.
No, it feels like an executioner granting a tragic, necessary mercy.
Right. He is putting this tortured, self-aware thing out of its misery, which leaves one final threat: the government.
Right, the NSA, led by Lemuel Johnson, they finally track them down to the aftermath of the cabin.
And Travis knows the government will never, ever stop coming for Einstein. So he orchestrates a massive bluff.
A really risky one.
He fakes the dog's death in the fire of the conflict. He claims he buried the dog in the woods and threatens to go to the press and expose the entire Bannatyne scandal.
All the illegal funding, the genetic tampering, the trail of bodies.
Exactly, a massive public scandal if the government tries to dig further.
And Lemuel Johnson, the head NSA agent, actually lets them walk away.
Which is surprising, but Johnson is a fascinating character because he provides the final thematic parallel. Throughout the story, Johnson pitied the creatures. He looked at the outsider in the lab and felt sorry for it.
But Johnson also feels trapped himself.
Right. He is locked in the metaphorical cages of his own stressful, demanding life, bound by duty and bureaucracy.
So when he sees the bond between Travis, Nora, and Einstein, when he sees what real connection looks like, he decides he isn't going to be the one to put that dog back in a cage.
It's a beautiful moment. He accepts Travis's lie, turns his back, and walks away.
It's a powerful synthesis of the narrative's core themes. The story proves that love and free will, represented by this newly bonded family unit of Travis, Nora, and Einstein, can conquer both the darkest human delusions, like Nasco, and the most terrifying biological programming, like the outsider.
It all comes back to a message Einstein spelled out on the Scrabble board earlier in the story. Remember when Travis asked him what would happen if he ever had to leave them?
Yes, and Einstein, using his little paws to slide the wooden tiles, spelled out, "I would die of lonely."
It's just devastating.
But it is the unifying truth of the entire deep dive. Connection is the ultimate survival tool.
It really is.
It doesn't matter if you are a reclusive woman terrified of the outside world, a grieving man walking into the woods to end his life, or a genetically altered golden retriever.
Right. Without connection, without someone to share our consciousness with, we are entirely lost.
Absolutely.
And that brings us right back to the woods where we started. Imagine walking into those trees, having entirely given up on the world, and finding a connection so profound it pulls you back to life. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to ponder long after you finish listening.
Okay, let's hear it.
As our own real-world technology advances, if humanity ever does successfully engineer a consciousness greater than our own, a mind trapped in a body we designed, ask yourself, will our first instinct be to embrace it or to weaponize it? And if we weaponize it, who is the real monster.